Hi everybody, Jim Stevens here in Durango, Colorado. We've got another InsideFoosTV conversation for you, this one with the great Tony Spredeman, recorded this past March 11th. Tony allowed us a look into his legendary foosball career while chatting with us from the backyard of his home on a warm and sunny day in Inverness, Florida. These InsideFoosTV remote conversations have become a regular part of our foosball programming. I hope you enjoyed the chat we had with the Hall of Famer Rob Maras a week or so ago, and our visit with Foosballers director Joe Hesslinga last month. Part of our new approach here at InsideFoosTV is to publish entertaining new content on the channel at least a couple of times a week. And with the cancellation of live foosball events for the foreseeable future, we hope this content can help us all stay connected to the sport we love during this historic shutdown of our world. As many of you have noticed, we have really taken things to new levels over the past 6 months with our coverage of the foosball world, both live and recorded. For now, the live coverage of tournaments has been put on hold, but we will continue with our InsideFoosTV conversations, classic videos, and other made-for-TV content throughout this difficult time. My goal this year has been to put the sport of table soccer in front of as many eyes as possible through the lens of InsideFoos, and we think that's a pretty good lens. And that mission statement will continue well into the future. I believe if we can all pull together during the next few months, we will come out the other side of this stronger than ever. While I anticipate that we will be able to continue in the foosball business during this shutdown, the loss of tournaments will affect the InsideFoos bottom line in a significant way. We may need a little help. InsideFoos will continue to be completely invested in the world table soccer scene with a strong vision of where we can help take the sport after we return to normal, whatever the new normal may be. With that being said, if there are any of you in a position to become sponsors, investors, content contributors, or partners in the InsideFoos project, please email me at insidefoos1@gmail.com or send me a Facebook message. We have a solid game plan of where we can help take the sport moving forward, and we'd love for all of you to be a part of it. We're currently running a special deal at InsideFoos.com. Get any 2 video sets from our 27-year collection for just $59. There's also a special price on the InsideFoos Complete Collection, which includes every match we've recorded during our nearly 3 decades of covering the Pro Foosball Tour. Check out the website for more information. Again, if you'd like to help support InsideFoos in any way, please email or message me, and please subscribe to InsideFoosTV. And now, enjoy an interview with one of the truly special people the sport has ever produced. Hi again, everybody. I'm Jim Stevens, coming to you from the InsideFoosTV studios here in Durango, Colorado, and welcome to an InsideFoosTV conversation with Tony Spredeman. Tony Spredeman is a 15-time world champion who has dominated the singles category like no American player ever has, with 8 Tornado World Singles Championships, including the last 5 in a row. Tony's aggressive walking snake and electric 5-row, which may be the best ever, have helped propel this legendary player to heights not seen before in the world of table soccer. From his home in Inverness, Florida, welcome, Tony Spredeman.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Tony, I can see you're sitting outside. Looks like a beautiful day there in Florida. It's a little cold and rainy here in Durango. But I know you moved from Milwaukee originally, and you really do enjoy the Florida lifestyle, don't you?
Yeah, this is the whole reason I moved down. Winters in Florida are to die for.
Well, and what's an average day like for you?
An average day consists of, to be honest, it's pretty relaxing. When I'm not at a tournament, I'm at home with my dog, hiking and playing a little bit of guitar. Leading up to a foosball tournament, I'm watching videos, practicing a little bit, shipping off grips, merchandise from my online store. But like I said, it's pretty relaxing midweek. So
now, do you have a practice routine? Do you even practice every day, or do you kind of wait for a tournament to come and then kind of spend a few days or a week or two beforehand kind of gearing up for it?
There's no routine, really. It's typically, at this point, it's muscle memory. I've been playing for 24 years, and it's, I've got nothing in my game is going to change. I've got pretty much what I do down. If I'm inconsistent on a couple of things, like at the moment, my 2 to the 5 series has been a little bit off. So I'll try and add a wrinkle here or there. So I'll go up and mess around on the table for 30, 40 minutes and just try and, work on little things. But at this point, the main thing that I'm worried about is more so watching video and what can I do differently to get on somebody defensively, something like that. So that's the main type of practice I do.
So you were telling me before we went live here that tomorrow you're heading up to your old home state of Wisconsin to play with your dad at the Wisconsin State Championships.
Yeah, tomorrow evening we're heading up. I still have family up there and some friends. But it's a great tournament run by some old friends of mine, and it's just kind of cool to get to go back to your roots and see a lot of the old faces. And it's no fun as it's going to be kind of cold up there. But the best part is I'm playing with my dad. Bud got me started in foosball. He's my best friend, and we recently just played the Florida State championships, I believe last week. So we did really well, winning open doubles there, and we're going to go try and do it again this weekend.
Tony and Bud, your dad, are stars of the new movie Foosballers, which is available at iTunes. Talk a little bit about your experience of shooting that movie with director Joe Hesslinga.
Oh, it was truly an honor to be a part of it. Joe did an amazing job, especially for someone who coming into it knew nothing about foosball. He has no background whatsoever. And at this point, I think he could probably tell you more history on the game, and he knows more about the game than 99% of the people, more than I do, that's for sure. But
he really
Joe
did his homework, didn't he?
He did his homework, but not only did he do his homework on the history of the game, but he really got to know the players. We let him into our homes and in our spaces, and he made us feel very comfortable. And I think that's why the movie was such a success, is because he got to see the true sides of us, because he's just a great guy. He's a great guy and did awesome work, and he really did foosball justice, especially since we've had some bad press in the past and stuff like that. Yeah. So I was just, like I said, I was just proud to be a part of it. Great experience.
And again, if you haven't seen the movie, head over to iTunes. You can rent it or buy it. As documented in the movie Foosballers, you started playing the game in the greater Milwaukee area in the late 1990s with your dad, going to bars and playing mostly with an adult crowd. What was that like?
Well, it forced me to mature a lot faster. Not that I'm so mature now, but growing up around adults and even though it's, like you said, a bar atmosphere, you always have somebody looking out for you. You have, adults kind of keeping an eye on you. And I never really gotten in any trouble as a kid. So it was, it was a passion and an obsession of mine to play tournaments. And I was with my dad, so it was perfect to, share a common bond with him. And then I've met, all my friends are older than me. I grew up playing with Emilio Gilmore, who's, 20 years older than I am. So I don't know. I kind of lost out on some of my childhood. Like I didn't go to, high school parties or anything. I was busy playing foos tournaments. So I'd come home at, 6, 7, 8 in the morning Monday after a tournament. I'd go directly to school, smelling like a bar, like smoke. My teachers would ask me if I was smoking in the park, and I'm like, no, I was at a foos tournament. So it was definitely an experience. I don't recommend it, but it kind of worked out for me, Yeah,
it sure did. Did you ever play against players your own age? At least in the early years?
Nah. Well, growing up, there was a couple of junior players. The main one that most people would know nowadays, Teddy Krieger. He was my main competition, like my age, and a friend of mine. And he's a couple years older than me, so I was always trying to catch up to his level. And but it's just the junior division is just not easy to really break through, because, like you said, I was playing in bars and stuff. So that was the main problem with getting kids into the game.
Of course, Teddy Kruger, still playing. He's out on tour on a pretty regular basis and a heck of a good player himself. I first heard about you back in 96, 97, 98, somewhere in there, when the Wisconsin promoter Bill Maloney told me he had this kid at his tournaments that was really going to be a great player. And I said, well, that's great. That's great, Bill. Nice to see you. And then you show up in 2001 at the Tornado World Championships. After winning, I believe you won in 97. I think you won a junior championship in 1997 up in Oshkosh.
No, I actually won my first junior title with Teddy Krieger in 1998 at the U.S. Open in Minneapolis. 97 was my first tour tournament that I saw, the 97 Nationals, and Billy Pappas won that one, I think, Steve Bilirakis.
So in 2001, you show up at the Tornado World Championships. You win both amateur events, I believe, both expert events and junior. You win 5 first-place finishes, 5 first-place trophies in one of the great debut performances out on the pro tour that we've seen. Talk a bit about that experience.
Well, I was already a pretty good player at that point, for the simple fact that even though I didn't tour, I went out to Mary Moore's tournaments, which back then was the IFP tour. So I'd go to the tour, the Super Bowl of Foosball, which was in January, and then the Kentucky State in August. So I already had some tour experience, even though I was still rated a rookie. I was winning, amateur, and I think even competing in expert events back then. So I was fairly seasoned for my age, and it was just always hard for us to get down to the Worlds in Dallas. So I practiced locally, and I had a tour in Wisconsin run by Dan Dubler. I believe it was called Whirlwind Promotions, and it was through Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota and Illinois as well. So I was regularly competing against guys like Terry Moore and Scotty Weidman, Steve Mose, Emilio Gilmore, Ron Greenwald. So really, top players, and then even like solid pros. Stu Steiner was back there, Mike Vandenbosch. We had really strong players.
Yes.
And even Weidman was up in Minnesota back then. So like I said, I had a lot of experience under my belt as a young kid. Just nobody outside of the Midwest knew who I was. So I showed up, but before the tournament, and this is when I was really into practicing. I practiced nonstop before that tournament. I told my dad, I told Bud, I said, I'm going to win rookie doubles, rookie singles, semi-pro doubles, semi-pro singles. I told him this, and he's rolling his eyes at me. He goes, why don't you worry about 17 and under at first? Why don't you worry about 17 and under first? And it just made me so mad. I'm like, I'm going to show you. You just wait. So I ended up having to play Rob Athens 17 and under, and it was Ryan Moore and I. Mary Moore actually sponsored me to help me get down to the Worlds that year. And I played 17 and under with Ryan, a very young Ryan Moore, who he wasn't great, but he came up huge in the match, and he's as he still does. He can always come up big in those big moments. And we ended up winning, I think, match ball second set against Rob Atha and Dylan Anderson, Brad Anderson's son. Really good match. And then from there, my confidence just kind of boosted. I got used to the tables and proceeded to have an awesome weekend.
And how about that, folks? A junior match in 2001 featuring Ryan Moore, Tony Spredeman, Robert Atha. Now probably recognized as 3 as maybe the top 5 or 7 greatest all-around players in the history of the sport. And Dylan Anderson was a heck of a player at that time as well. Dylan did not stay with the tour. Of course, Brad Anderson, many of you are familiar with, has worked with me many times. But Dylan was a really good player as well. But how about that? 3 future Hall of Famers in that one junior match.
It seems like ages ago.
Well, after that 2001 World Championship, you were 16. Bill Maloney, again, the promoter up there in Wisconsin, came up to me and said, see, Jim, I told you I had this kid. And I said to him, Bill, it's amateur, it's semi-pro, it's 17 and under. Let's put the brakes on this just a little bit. 1 year later, you're in the open singles final against Frederic Collignon. How about that? You're 17 years old. You're in an open singles final at the Tornado World Championships. What a feeling that must have been. And he strokes it home. What a beautiful shot from Tony Spredeman. Tony once again feeling it.
Yeah, at that point, maybe I was too young to realize that I probably shouldn't have even been there because I look back and I watch the videos. I wasn't that great. However, the style that I used was different than anybody else's, and it was difficult to defend because nobody's really had to defend against it before. So, like I said, my gameplay wasn't great. My table management wasn't great. I didn't really know what I was doing. My defense was horrible. But the simple fact that my game was so unique and different at that time, I think I caught a lot of people by surprise, caught them off guard, and kind of, you know, squeaked my way into the finals. And it was a great experience. And, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
So in '01, you win 5 non-pro events. You come back in '02, you reach the final of open singles. And then in 2003, you defeat Lewis Cartwright in the open singles final to win your first world championship.
Tony, hard along that outside wall. Here it is. Another chance to win the world championship for 18-year-old Tony Spredeman. Moving the ball around, stroking it home. Tony Spredeman has won the 2003 World Open Singles Championship. What a performance all weekend long for Tony. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Hugging his great friend Emilio Gilmore, grew up playing together. Tony's been working so hard to get back to this point, so emotional right now. What a great moment it is for Tony Spredeman.
Tony Spredeman, he's been playing the best foosball of anybody all weekend long. He plays the best foosball of anybody here in the Open Singles Final. That is one excited young man. He is the 2003 World Singles Champion.
Legend in the making.
Tony, you can't drink this, but you can wear it.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 2003 World Singles Champion, Tony Spredeman.
Well, that to me, I honestly wish that I could go back to the way foosball was back then. And I don't necessarily mean the game itself. It's the way that I felt about it and how hungry I was and what it meant to me back then. Like there's nothing like your first big win. So that was, yeah, it was really it was really special. I practiced so hard. The previous year when I lost to Federico, I was devastated because it's like being so close to your dream and kind of having it ripped away from you. It motivated me. It motivated me to the point where for a whole year I put Federico's face on the screensaver of my computer. So every time I'd hop on, I'd have to see his face, and it really motivated me. I was obsessed. And so through that whole year, again, I was playing against Terry Moore, and at that point I was even playing some tournaments with Terry, and I was getting some real big game experience and stuff like that. And to be able to visualize something and achieve it, and work so hard and then achieve it at the end of the year was just an amazing feeling. And I wish that I can have that feeling again. It's not quite the same. Every win is satisfying, but nothing compares to the very first one.
And then during the mid-2000s, you win a national singles championship, I believe, up in Minneapolis.
Tony Spredeman looking for the national title, and he gets it, stroking it home to the far side. Yet another impressive performance from 19-year-old Tony Spredeman from Cudahy, Wisconsin. The world singles champion is now the national singles champion.
And you also paired up with Billy Pappas at the Hall of Fame Classic to win in a classic final against Collignon and Lafredo. Talk about the mid-2000s. You didn't win a world championship again for 5 years, but you still picked up a few titles during the course of that 5-year period.
Yeah, well, when you break onto the scene, like I said, I kind of surprise people with the different style and everything, and once you get put on the radar, things get harder. It's a lot. It's hard to win, but it's a lot harder to keep winning, to stay at the top. Because people are looking at you, breaking your game down, and they're getting more experience against you and figuring out things that you don't like, and you know so throughout the 2000s. Also, I was working full time, and I just didn't put as much into the game as I had previously. But it was, like I said, it was a lot harder to win, and there's a lot of good players in the late 90s, early 2000s, and even into the mid 2000s before a lot of them started to drop off. Getting to play with Billy was an amazing experience. We were the young guys trying to really break through, and we had the physical ability, but not necessarily all the experience. The Hall of Fame that you spoke of was really a big breakthrough. I think that was the first time that Fred and Todd lost the finals together, or first time they've been double dipped or something like that. They beat us on match ball in the winners bracket. Billy shot a pull kick back into our own goal. There's a lot of controversy in the match. Yeah, and we came back, and there was some questionable calls in the match, and questionable things that, in my opinion, that Fred was doing, resetting on big points. And he even asked the referee at that point, how many more resets do I have? So that, to me, it really it upset me, because it's like, obviously you're doing it on purpose and at opportune times. So it was great experience, because I learned how to deal with it. It really evoked a lot of emotion out of me, and it kind of upset me. And I used to get really fired up back then, and sometimes it would work out, and sometimes it would work against me. So it really helped shape me as a player those years, because I learned to kind of control my emotions, and I don't have these huge ups and downs. I think I try and keep more steady and more calm. I could still have that fire, but I don't show it as much, and I don't let it affect me as much as I used to. So those mid 2000s were probably the best experience of my foosball career.
Well, you also mentioned you were working full-time during that time period, and you had an accident at work that really changed your life, didn't it?
Yeah, in 2008, I fell about 20 feet. The June of 2008, I fell 20 feet, and I broke my back. I fractured my L2 and L3 vertebrae on the job site, put me out of the trade, and I was in essentially a turtle shell for 6 months or so. And in 2008 Worlds, September of 2008, I was still having back problems, but leading up to that tournament, I had plenty of time to practice, and because I had nothing else better to do. It was essentially my physical therapy, and I had a great run at singles, winning the 2008 Worlds against Federico that year, I believe, double dipping him.
Yeah. The onslaught continues, and Tony steals it away. Spredeman angles it off the man into the goal. Tony Spredeman in 4 games in the second set, after sweeping the first set in 3 straight games, defeats Federico Lignon to win the 2008 World Open Singles Championship on the Tornado table.
Yeah, that was, in many people's opinion, the greatest performance they had ever seen, certainly up till that time. And to double dip Federico, and to do it in the way you did it, and if those of you watching at home have not yet seen it, we may have some of it at least up at the InsideFoosTV channel. But talk about what it was like to beat Fred in singles and do it in the way that you did.
It was, obviously, it's satisfying, because he's the best player to ever touch a foosball table. As far as, at every aspect, especially at that point, he had more wins than everybody on every table and was seemingly unstoppable. Leading up to that match, he just lost the open doubles final to Dave Gummison and Trace McMillan. So I think they possibly shattered his spirit for me a little bit. And I don't know, the cards just things just worked out for me, and I came out aggressive and just did what I was going to do, and kind of kept the pedal to the metal the whole match, and things
And this
unfolded
was
in my favor.
this was 3 months after falling off a ladder 20 feet. And that's, I think, one of the other things. No one really expected you to win that year because we knew that you were coming off an injury or still in the middle of an injury. And then to play the way you did was really a remarkable thing. The next year, 2009, you join Team USA for your first World Cup, and it turns out to be the first win for Team USA.
Spredeman looking to give the Americans a 4-2 lead. And he does. Stroke it into the far side. Tony Spredeman, Adrian Zamora defeat Hervé Dos Santos and Paul Nunez, and the Americans win the first 2 double sets. They lead 4-2.
Way to fight, Tiger. Way to fight. Yeah.
You've gone on since then to win a total of, I believe, 6 gold medals. Talk about your experience with Team USA, how special that is, and especially that first one, how exciting that was.
Well, it was a really interesting experience. Think about all the guys on our team. I'm used to battling them throughout the year. We have our grudges. We have our, we have a lot of times tension on the table or whatever. Well, when you go and play the World Cup, you have to put everything aside and look at the big picture. You're representing your country, and now these guys that I'm used to playing against are on my team. So it was really exciting, and being abroad and especially in France, we had to like battle the crowds a lot, and we were essentially the bad guys a lot of the times, and yeah, it was just an amazing experience. And multi-table was really difficult, especially for my style, because I'm not used to at that point. I really wasn't used to the tables, and my game didn't translate to them. You can't really tic-tac too much on the other tables. My 2 to the 5 was different, so it helped shape my game in a different way. Kind of a full appreciation for the European style, and a full appreciation for just multi-table players in general. So, but to win for my country with a bunch of friends of mine was a great experience, and again, a true honor.
And then in the 2010s, of course, all the World Cup titles, the 7 total World Championship singles titles you won, 3 World Doubles titles. It was quite a decade for you as you really elevated your status to now what people believe you may be the greatest American player ever, certainly the greatest American singles player. Talk a little bit about maybe how your work ethic, and maybe even going back to your accident, you really couldn't take anything for granted anymore, because you do have a reputation for playing every single ball right from ball one. And that really is what allowed you, I believe, to have such an incredibly successful decade, at least during the 2010s.
Yeah, work ethic for sure. And you may get some arguments, but the way that I see it is I've always had to work a little bit harder than a lot of the top players. And what I mean by that is if you break down my game, I'm definitely not as talented as guys like Billy. I'm not as talented as guys like Brandon Moreland, Ryan Moore, Robert Atha. They could do amazing things on the table as far as physical ability, the shots that they could hit, the way they could stroke a pull shot and push kicks and all this stuff. My game is completely unorthodox, and again, that's worked out for me. But I've always had to work a little bit harder, and I'm not able to get away with some of the things that they do. I had to learn different ways to be successful, and I have to be sometimes sneakier or more opportunistic in certain situations. So, like I said, I have to work a little bit harder in order to compete with these guys and their amazing abilities on the table. So that's just how it's worked out.
And another thing that was really apparent, especially during this last decade, is how good your record is in DYPs out on tour. Now, I understand that you play every event to win it, but there's a certain art to playing a DYP. Of course, you've got to play your game, but you also have to immediately mesh with your partner, have to become a team pretty quickly. And you really do take pride in that, I know. And you're a guy that really is considered a great teammate. Obviously, people love to draw you in the DYPs, but it turns out to be a super experience both on and off the table for these guys. Talk a little bit about the importance of chemistry in those sort of situations.
Well, let's go back to when I started playing foosball. I mean, you think about I would go down and I'd play DYPs with guys like Terry Moore and top players, and I knew it. I just kind of remember what it feels like to draw one of those guys and how good of an experience it was. So now the roles are reversed for me, and I want to give those, my partner the best possible experience, and in the process teach them something and have fun with them as well. What I've learned is that everybody learns in a different way, so that's, I think, part of the key to my success is I understand how people learn, and I understand how different people take criticism. You could tell one guy, don't give this guy a long, and he'll do everything he can to not give him a long, but he'll jump out of the way. Well, you could tell that same guy, make him go straight. Well, it's essentially the same thing. Don't give him a long, and if he can't stay there and he's jumping off, well, make him go straight. Okay, well, I'm gonna show him the straight. Well, if he's showing him the straight, he's gonna be on the long. So it's all about how you word things and just kind of make it light and fun for the players. And because there's pressure on them, I try and make them laugh, and I'll make stupid jokes or whatever. And at the same time, I want to put forth my all, so they don't have to. I don't want to disappoint them. And but I truly have a good time playing draws, and like I said, I put forth as much effort as possible.
And speaking of putting forth effort, you did that early on in your career. It's what helped to make you a great player. Is there anything else in your life where you have put that same sort of effort or focus, concentration, work ethic, anything else in your life where you feel like either you learned it from foosball or perhaps it was parallel to what you were doing in foosball? But you really did, I think, in foosball, learn how to win, how to get the most out of yourself. What else in life do you think that you put that same sort of effort into?
To be honest, I haven't put that kind of effort into anything, and to be honest, that's why I'm as successful at foosball as I am, is because I've made it an absolute priority in my life. And I know if everybody else were to do that, things wouldn't it wouldn't be as easy for me. I know that. I'm not to say I wouldn't still win tournaments or whatever, but I truly focused on foosball, and I've made it a priority in my life. Of course, I dabble in other little things. I'm competitive in different aspects, and I like to play guitar. I love music recreationally. I've recently started playing skee ball. But nothing to the extent of the amount of effort that I put into foosball. Fishing, I love fishing. For a while, I was really hooked on fishing, and I'd go, out on the water a lot. But again, nothing to the extent of foosball.
Well, watching you at foosball tournaments, it's obvious that you care deeply about the future of foosball. You're great with the kids. Talk a little bit about the junior program, how important it is for kids to have something to play in schools, and the work of John O'Brien.
Oh, yeah. Again, this goes back to when I started. I can put myself in the place of those kids, and looking up to the top players and how exciting it is to have something new in their life. And the main thing for me is walk into a foosball tournament and just look at the average age of the player. I'm 35 now, and I'm essentially one of the younger guys in the room, which, you go over to Europe and, I'm practically a senior over there. So going back to it, what John O'Brien's doing up in New York is super important to bring new blood into the game and to get some, new, fresh, young faces in the room, and I think it's one of the most important things going on in foosball today. Super important to get new players and young kids into the game.
So you mentioned you're going up to Wisconsin for this weekend's Wisconsin State Championships, and I guess next after that, Hall of Fame Classic, you'll be competing with your good friend Robert Mares, who we talked to a little earlier in an interview. Talk about your relationship with Mares on and off the table.
Rob and I, over the years, have become really, really good friends.
Tony Spredeman puts the ball back into play. Set up, strokes it home, and there it is. Tony Spredeman and Robert Mares are the 2018 Open Doubles champions here at the Hall of Fame Classic. Great performance, great finals performance. Great shooting by Tony, great defending by Rob, and again, they are the champions.
And it's so funny because early on in the mid-2000s, when I was playing with Billy Pappas, as we spoke about before, we had some real issues with Rob, and we were kind of the young guys coming up, and we had a little bit of attitude, and we kind of battled back and forth, and we got the best of him, I think, at one of the tournaments, and he mumbled some stuff under his breath, and so we always had this kind of bad blood going together. In the very first World Cup or the World Championships in Italy, Rob Mares and myself were the two Americans that got to represent, and this is before the team event, and it was only a singles event. It was just the World Championships, not the World Cup. So I go over to Italy, and upon arrival, they tell me that because I'm here with another American, I have to room with this guy, Rob Mares. And I'm going, oh, great, this guy. So it was, I wasn't happy because I had some bad blood with him. I didn't really like the guy at the time. And it was a really important lesson. I got to room with him, and I got to know him as a person away from foosball. And it was an important lesson in my life to learn to separate foosball and personal relationships, which isn't always easy to do. So that was my first real experience with him. We found out we have a lot in common musically and just our personalities in general. And since then, we became super tight. We go to concerts together. We talk music. I talk to him 3-4 times a week at this point. And we've won some world championships together, multi-table world championships. And again, it's really important to have this chemistry in order to become a top doubles team. And do I think that we're the best all-around team, as far as Rob being a pure goalie or me being a pure forward? Because I think I'm a better singles player than I'm a doubles player. And Rob's kind of an all-around kind of guy. He's not necessarily a pure goalie. But it doesn't matter with us because we're on the same page. We could talk about different opponents, different strategies, and we have a blast playing together. We have so much fun playing together, and we're playing for each other, which is the most important part. Like, I want to win for my partner, and if you don't have something to play for, like, what's the point?
That's awesome. It's amazing to think that it's been 19 years since Tony Spredeman broke onto the tour with those 5 wins in Dallas back in 2001. Here we are 19 years later. How many more years are you going to do this, Tony? Do you envision yourself still playing a few more years competitively? As you said, you're the ripe old age of 35, which used to be the senior event, by the way, back in the 90s. Dinosaur doubles, 35 and over. And now, as you say, you're one of the younger of the top players. But how many more years do you think you have?
Well, I just look at Todd, and he's kind of setting the standard. Like, as long as Todd could go, I'm thinking, well, I can. If he could do it, I could do it. And it's a lot easier on me shooting a rollover than Todd shooting a pull shot. So he's I don't know if he's into his 60s by now, or at least close to it. I'm pretty sure.
60
I don't see myself 60 this year. I don't see myself quitting anytime soon. I feel great. I still love the game, and I have a blast. I'm having a blast. I'm living the ultimate dream. When I was about 12 or 13 years old, my dad and I were in Lexington, Kentucky, and I remember we just got knocked out of expert doubles, and the weekend was ending. We had to drive back up to Milwaukee. I had to go to school the next day, and I was just bummed out. And my dad looked at me and he goes, what's the matter? I go, I don't. He goes, I told him I didn't want this to end, and he couldn't believe that I truly loved foosball that much. And I said, I wish foosball was life. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I wish that another tournament would start right now, and I wish I could live in hotels. And fast forward till now, that's pretty much what's happening. So I am living my ultimate dream, and I couldn't be happier. Life is amazing.
Tony Spredeman, living the dream on a warm, sunny day down in Inverness, Florida. Thank you so much for joining us, Tony.
Thanks for having me, Jim. It's always a pleasure.
Great job by Tony Spredeman. A very interesting backstory from one of the great champions in the history of table soccer. All right, for everybody involved with helping to make this possible, thank you, and we'll see you foozing.
And if you'd like to become an InsideFoos contributor, sponsor, or advertiser, please email InsideFoos1@gmail.com. And I'd like to recognize our InsideFoosTV partners. Rodlock, the best practice tool. Protectoflex Rod Guards Foosball Safety System. The IFP Pro Tour. RFDAS Security Systems. Now hiring heroes. The law offices of Dale Carson. Foosballers, now available at iTunes, Vimeo, Google Play, and Vudu. And Foosball Premier Leagues.